everyone to the One Moment Podcast. You got your boy and your co-host Kevin Odom, and you got your another co-host and co-founder, one of them, anyways, Mr. Ruben Burney. Now, on today's very special episode, we have a distinguished and honorable guest, Miss Lorraine Bilodeau. Now, I have known her for a number of years, and we have spoken about everything from politics to substance use to suicide prevention to mental health diagnoses to violence. We've talked about clinical supervision. We've talked about providing clinical interventions. We've spoken about a lot of things. And fun fact, she used to be my clinical supervisor, and I got nothing but respect for this young lady. And I don't want to tell too much of her story before we get started, but I've always introduced her as being a very renowned clinical supervisor and a substance use professional. Now, to get us started, though, in today's very special episode, I want her to introduce herself to the general public. And Miss Lorraine, I'm going to pass the mic off to you.
Oh, well, thank you. I don't know what the general public would like to hear, but I am now retired, supposedly, although I still do some clinical supervision and some training, as we were just talking about. And my specialties have been substance abuse and also anger and aggression. And I think that's probably what brought me here today was the aggressive nature that's going on and how aggression in our society is increasing. And it's becoming very normal now on TV to see a school shot up or a shoot up in the middle of town or someone driving a pickup truck through a crowd of people to kill them. And instead of using our intelligence to become a more peaceful people, we seem to be using it and our creativity to become more violent. And we're becoming normalized to that. And I also hear people constantly talking about gun laws, we got to control the guns. I don't think that's going to work. It isn't as simple. Um, it isn't as simple a solution that we, the guns, I hate to say it, guns don't kill people. People are pulling the trigger on the guns. And before we had guns, people used other weapons to do mass violence, and that's really what we're talking about. And so I became even more so now as it's growing. I'm becoming more and more uh, concerned about how we are now starting to take that as a normal place in our life and on our TV. I mean, if you want to get known, go kill someone or kill a bunch of someone's. And they really go to town and keep you on TV. So that's what brought me here today. Was that's not working. And I pass it back to you, Mr. Kevin. Or Ruben.
Well, everybody knows I'm a co-founder of the podcast. It was Kevin's initial idea, come up with podcasting. Kevin's very persistent. He pulled my arm and I got involved, and I really enjoyed it. I took a leave of absence when I had my surgery on my hips, just to relax and take time off. But I'm glad, and I'm glad when I speak highly of Lorraine as well, because Lorraine was when I moved here from New York and got a job here at Pinehurst. I met Lorraine. She was the clinical supervisor for this clinic. So I've known her since 2019, and like Kevin said, we come and talk about everything. You know, although she's my clinical supervisor, I consider her a friend as well. So yes, I look forward to picking her brain and see where she's at. And I agree with her. It seems like violence has become normalized, and everybody gets into a tribe and wants to say, well, who's right and who's wrong, and we become so divided. I'm just wondering, is it too late to go back to some type of normalcy? Are we past the brink of no return? I'm just wondering.
I hope we are not at the point of no return. I know that in order for us to go back, we really do have to take a look at what we want our society to become. And one of the things that we must stop doing is always pointing out how other people are different, or how some people are different than we are.
Yes.
One of the things that I learned at a recent educational experience that I went to a summer school, one of the things that really hit home is all of the presenters talked about how human beings are used to being part of a herd, HERD, a herd.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not part of our herd, then we have the right to kill you or to hurt you or to harm you. If you're a part of our herd, then we defend you. So, as long as, and the way that we push people out of the human herd is to mentally define them as not being human. And we do that using language. You're not a human being if I call you scuzz. Or, think about what I found interesting is think about what the military does when they're training their soldiers to go to war. They do not tell those soldiers, oh, the people you're going to shoot and kill are just like you. They're fathers and they have families and they, have desires. They don't do that. They don't say, oh, that's a human like us. What they say is, you're a geek, you're scuzz, you're anytime. Think of the war that you may have heard about. What were the soldiers calling the people they were going to shoot and kill?
Mm-hmm. That's
And
a good point.
Ruben, throughout history in the United States, I'm sure that there are words that defined people who were different than the English and the others who came to our country,
Sure.
and then you could treat them like animals. African Americans have had that experience.
Sure. Definitely.
And they react when they hear those names again, because that's what pulls them away and allows us to put them in chains, to beat them, to kill them, to lock them up, to throw them in cages like you would an animal. And we somehow have got to stop looking for those differences and starting to respect again the humanity of each person. And the first thing that we need to do to have that happen is to drop all of the hurtful names that dehumanize each other, that makes it so we can harm you. And that starts at home.
Yes.
It starts at home. And it can't be done with a law. If we don't do that, bullies will continue to rise. Mass violence will continue, because once someone's been bullied by a group, they want to get back and get even. What they have found is that these mass killers are not mentally ill. They are actually reacting in some very similar ways as other people would react.
Sure.
And it's just getting worse. I went, as I heard about this podcast and that I could be on it and speak, um, I went and looked up the phrase going postal. Do you remember that?
I remember that because for a while, it seemed postal workers were engaged in this going back to the workplace and shooting it up. For a while, you heard that. Yes. Yes. I'm
Yeah.
not laughing, but I remember that. Oh, yes,
It
yes.
was 1973 to be
Mhm,
exact.
mhm.
And that was really the first mass shooting that I can remember anyway, uh, that went on. And going postal didn't gain that name until, probably 1980s, when it
Yes.
continued to happen. Actually,
Mhm.
they kept going back to the post to their place of work and shooting people up.
Yes.
And so we coined that phrase. And that really was the beginning. And then Columbine. Those are the two things that I remember are
In the
the
1990s,
post.
yes.
Yep. And I was working at an adolescent program. And that was the first time I'd ever seen on TV, at least, or heard about um, the mass shooting in a school. And it was a new thing and hit all the TV. And what has happened since then is it's become more and more frequent.
Yes.
And in fact, we all were shocked. Even the adolescents that I was uh, encountering in my job, they were shocked at that they had had guns and that they had gone in and killed classmates and people they knew. And now we're not shocked. We're hurt when we see it. We feel sad about it. Some of us get angry about it. We start blaming people everywhere about why it's happening. And but it has become almost normal. And part of that is that TV keeps it going for weeks and weeks.
Yes. The
And
news and what have you.
and the gentleman, Mr. Kirk,
Mhm.
who you all uh, are aiming at about talking about this evening, I guess, he was one of the victims now. And if the sad part is, if he had not been as proficient in his presentations to the general public, he probably would not have gotten the coverage or the shock
Yes.
that many people are feeling now about it.
Mhm.
But if you remember, Gabby, I think her name was Gifford, also
Yes.
shot, and
Yes.
she lived, and people were upset about it, and yet at the same time, it didn't take over the airwaves,
Right. Yes.
and yet now it's always not only his demise, and which is sad. That shouldn't happen. We should be free to speak in our culture. That's what the United States is about. It's
Hmm.
about freedom of speech and to be
Right.
who we are. And yet,
Sure.
what gets on TV is who we're not. And that's very, very sad that because what we're doing is when that happens is exactly what the people who are committing mass violence want to see happen. And yet, if I really thought of people as human beings and didn't call them names to dehumanize them, then I wouldn't want to, I wouldn't want that to be a part of my culture. I would be upset about not only the killing, but the behavior itself.
I grew up during a time. I was born in 1956, so I grew up during towards the end like Jim Crow, and
Yeah.
I remember even my parents, my father having a job, but the one place that he felt like well respected was in his herd at his local church, where
Yes.
he might have been a deacon or a member of the church and highly respected. That's why oftentimes you find the black church played a role in uh, the community because of the fact that that was the one place where you felt like you're respected, that people look up to you. Could be a deacon in the church and the way. But I remember I went to my own experience. Integration became probably prior to integration. I had a choice whether I wanted to go to a predominantly black school or a white school, and my sister chose the African American school, and I chose the white middle school. And my first experience was like, wow, it was challenging, but I was determined I'm not going to let anybody beat me down. So over time, to the next year, uh, the schools they integrated after that in the late 1960s. So, but you're talking about once people got to know you, you know, I think it was hard for them to get to know your family, got to know you. It was hard for them to like see you as less than human, and that's what I saw that was going on when they had the civil rights and when they talk about going over the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, and they had. I remember they showed that I was young, but they showed that on the news. They actually showed where the police were beating the people, and they were also sicking dogs on them and spraying water hoses. When America saw that on the news, that kind of changed the perception because people were like, these people are human. They see women getting knocked down and beaten and stuff. So I think that kind of changed that perception, and I see it on both sides. When you see a person as human with human qualities, it's a challenge or difficult to dehumanize them.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. Yes.
Absolutely, Ruben. And some of what is happening, there's another thing, when we talk about guns, is that they have done research, and that just looking at a gun or seeing a gun, actually we have a visceral response to that, and we become frightened. And whenever there's fear, if you don't take care of the fear, it becomes anger. And then from anger, you get aggressive responses. So having people walk around with guns on their hips in schools only will add to the anger and the aggression. And when we look at soldiers going into cities with masks on their face, the mask on the face, hiding the face, you don't see their humanity.
Yes.
That too is a very dangerous thing that is happening. When you see someone with a mask on their face, fatigues like military, and a rifle, people have a tendency to feel themselves getting more and more afraid, which means more and more anger, which means eventually those guns are going to go off and there's going to be confrontation.
Yes.
And what's interesting also is that when it happens, they're going to put it on TV and show it for a whole week long, at least.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And it's that normalization that just heightens it. And in fact, if we would get rid of the guns, but we can't now, we're a gun society. But just seeing the gun itself enhances the piece of being aggressive. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I mean, we're it's hard. And as I say, it needs there's one school out in the Midwest who started a project, and this is going to sound funny at first. Their school is the rocket ship to Mars. It's an elementary school.
Okay.
And everyone has to act as though their survival depends on each other. No matter what the color, no matter what the ethnicity is, you're all Martians, okay? Because none of you are green, so no one's ahead of the game. And it became a helping culture once they all saw that, hey, we're of the same herd.
Yes.
And the problems that they had been having with aggressive outbursts before that. That's why they did the rocket ship to Mars, was to show them that they all needed each other. If they had to survive, they all need each other. Mm-hmm. And that was just a very poignant kind of thing, and it never failed. It never failed. And that's what's happening here, is that instead of seeing how we're similar, we are looking and seeing how you're different. And
Sure.
Instead of saying, I want to help this person, it's more like, I want to get over on this person. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And it's happening on both sides. So yes. on both sides of anything, just about. And so it can be very dangerous. And the only way to change it is to become a society that is willing to look at and to begin again teaching our children that, guess what? We need each other to survive. No matter the color, no matter where they're going to, no matter where they've been, no matter what their politics are, we need each other, and we're all of the same herd, and we're all in the same rocket ship. And until we do that, we will not be successful in changing our culture from a hurtful one, which is normal, it's normalized now, to a helpful one, and make that normalized again.
I think social media can play a negative role for us. I know I'm guilty of that sometimes. When I read a comment of somebody, I don't even know the person, and I might interject myself into the conversation, because when I see something, I might make a politically, they might be this way or that way. And then I find that I had that happen the other day, and I find the person said to me, you're making assumptions about me. And I realized I was making assumptions about that person because of their political views or whatever. And I found that over time, I went back and looked through he said I could look through his Facebook page, and I had the wrong assumption. So sometimes I think we do, and social media can compound that by, we can divide in our troops, and we can divide in our tribes, and we can come at the other person and engage in insulting behavior and rhetoric, and it can be a curse as well as a benefit. Social media, I think sometimes we have to know how to use it, though. And I'm just glad social media came along at a time in my life when I was older and not really influenced by it. So if I post something on social media and I only get 2 likes, it doesn't bother me. But I've known people, younger people, who get upset by that. So I'm glad it came along in my life when it doesn't really have a big influence on my life.
Right.
So I'll just mark the tape. Ruben, can you close your blind? I cannot see your face
glare.
at all.
Okay, yes. The glare, okay. How's that?
Thank you. 10 times better.
Yes.
So no, both of you are saying valid things, because Lorraine, when you first started off talking, you made the comment that getting rid of guns isn't going to solve the problem, right? And so I'd like to run some stats by you and get your thought process on it, because I think I think you're right in many areas, especially with the emotion regulation piece, right? And I say emotion regulation, I don't mean like learning to regulate our emotions. I mean the emotional development of each of us, right? And so I'm gonna read off to you some of these stats. It says in U.S. cities with high levels of single parenthood, total crime rates are 48% higher. Violent crime rates are 118% higher, and homicide rates are 255% higher compared to cities with lower single parent rates. At the neighborhood level in Chicago, current census states with high single parent households see 137% higher total crime, 226% higher violent crime, and 436% higher homicide rates. Even after controlling for variables like poverty, education, and racial composition, the association remains significant for violent crime in many cases. So, do you think that we should look at programs that benefit keeping parents, and I say parents like times two, both parents, regardless of male, male or female? Do you think we should try to look at doing more programs that benefit two parent households and that increase two parent households versus, yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts?
How would you do that?
It's a great question. And I don't know. I mean, for me, I think about doing, putting together programs for parents and families to be able to go to, whether it be discounted, funded, or what have you. I mean, that's one of my first thought process as far as incentivizing two parent households.
Hmm. Um, I think I would want to know one more step in the research, which is what is it about the single parent households that actually increases the problems that you stated? Because is it, I mean, do you want someone to stay with living with someone who's violent, where the spouse is violent? And so you become a one parent household. I mean, that's what my mind was that sound, how do we do that?
Yeah, well, and I think another step. Let's say there's domestic violence involved, right? And I'm not, approving domestic violence when I say this, but there are many states and many counties and cities across this country where they will incentivize individuals if they are ever charged with domestic violence, for an example, to go through a domestic violence course. Same thing with like substance use treatment. Courts will typically, and sometimes depending on the state and the city and of course the person's history, they will mandate substance use treatment versus jail time, where they actually learn and get the education that they need or is needed. So that's just where my thought process is when I start thinking about incentivizing programs versus separating people. Does that make sense?
Well,
Yes.
yeah, I don't know if they need to be separated or not. I think, one of the things that I didn't mention is that domestic violence is included in the figures of mass violence. The way that they determine like mass shootings, and if it's a mass shooting or if it's a any mass violence, is more than four people. So they're four and more people, and they include in those numbers uh, domestic violence, uh, where they're counting up the numbers of who got killed and who didn't in violent acts. Um, they they include domestic violence in those. That is included in the numbers for mass violence. And so you've got whatever we do, if in fact we start doing it under a group, enough people to make the change. That if we had an attitude of kindness or an attitude of helpfulness instead of an attitude of bullying and putting people down, calling them names, that's the bullying piece of it all is really the piece that has people out shooting mass groups of people. Well, 4 or more people at a time. Yes.
No, I definitely agree with that, because I think it's going back into the dehumanization of people, the
Exactly.
dehumanization of, because if you look at what happened, during the Holocaust, Jews were,
Yes.
similar thing to slavery with African Americans, whether it was in Africa or even here in the U.S. or whatever country that slavery occurred in. These groups of people were dehumanized, right? Which allowed or created for the atmosphere to harm another person. And it's not just with that, but you see it across the board, whether it is whether it's domestic violence, whether it is, violent gangs that are, doing homicides with it, from one side to the other. We see it across the board. So, what do you feel like in your personal or professional capacity, either or, do you think is the most critical need or critical first step to not dehumanizing another person?
I think what you were speaking about earlier, the families that have the full family. I think that domestic violence is the same thing. And I will tell you, working with women, even those who are substance abusers or their husbands are substance abusers, I will tell you that one of the things I will say to them is that I tell all the women who have been the victim of domestic violence, the minute your person you are with, the male that you're living with, whether it's husband or boyfriend or whatever, the minute he calls you a bitch, get out of the room. Because he just dehumanized you. Humans are not bitches.
They are not. No, they are not. I'm just agreeing with you, ma'am.
Oh, okay. I thought, oh boy, someone's disagreeing. No, but that's true. They are saying, you're not the wife that I love. They're saying you're a bitch. You're something other than human. And once we do that, then we can hurt each other. I really believe it starts in the family. And if we can't get to families, maybe we could start by getting to the children and teaching them how to care for each other, how to help each other, and how to not call each other names, not to bully. And if we do that, if we could get, I'd love to get my hands on an elementary school where I could do this research and actually teach the teachers how to respond if they see there's about to be bullying. And also to engage the family in the process at that school so that the families know what we're doing and they can be a part of it. And so some of it may start, I really believe, in schools. And and that it depends on our attitudes. When they talk about teachers having guns, it scares the heck out of me,
Yes,
because,
too.
all the teacher has to do is start thinking about one of the students as a threat or as someone who really doesn't belong with us, and that, or someone in the class sees that gun and has that visceral reaction of guns are dangerous and immediate aggression starts.
Right.
It's, and how to handle that, how teach teachers how to handle it, have parents come in and teach them what you're going to do and ask for their help to do it. And I really do believe it'll take work, time, and money. But I'd love to have just one school where I could go and try it out. And
Kevin mentioned earlier about, like, he quoted stats like in Chicago, for example. And I always try not to keep it political, but one of the things they were saying, like, sending troops to these different places. And when you mentioned about having these troops with the fatigue on and how that increases person's fear, I find that they said oftentimes is having some that might solve the problem. It might be performative. It might solve the problem, like, for us, while the National Guard is there, it might decrease the crime. But what happens when they leave?
exactly.
So I'm saying the point is probably is to help those cities or those states with funding, like programs. They found those, like you said, starting in the schools. I know that sometimes we speak at the Boys and Girls Club. I see those young people there starting those type of organizations. I think that's what there's no one size fits all. And it's going to take years, but I don't think making a city safer by putting National Guard is performative. Basically, it's going to, if somebody's walking me to dinner, National Guard, I'm going to feel safe. But what happens when they leave? Then what happens? So I think that's not really, it's patching the problem. It's not really fixing the problem.
Yeah.
Well, it creates a temporary solution
Yes.
to a long-term problem. I, definitely would agree. And I also carry it a step further because both of you just mentioned something that, Lorraine and I were just talking about, was creating programs and building programs to bring people together, right? Like, do you know how many times I have done research and done a referral for somebody to, I don't know, community transportation, to community this, to community that? Like, I have, that is part of, doing case management as a healthcare worker, is getting individuals connected. And when they tell me they don't have transportation, well, in North Carolina, thank goodness, Medicaid usually pays for transportation to medical appointments or clinical appointments, things like that. Mm-hmm. So it's getting them, it might even be getting them set up with transportation through their insurance or their Medicaid. And it's really about getting them connected in the community for all of these services, because you might have some places they might have a substance use outpatient program, intensive outpatient program. And while there, they have built or created a parental daycare program for them. So when they come, parents can bring their kids and drop them off at the daycare and go to their group therapy, right? Mm-hmm. So they're still getting daycare, they're still getting treatment, and everything is integrated into one big ball of a program. And I say, big ball of a program, that's not the official term to use, but it makes sense. It's one program that you get your treatment and you get your child care help, because let's create a solution to a problem.
And as you talked, my mind kept going to, maybe we could start with neighborhoods.
Oh, yes.
Where the churches would also be part of it, the schools, start small and see what works and what doesn't. And by using churches and schools and other community groups, you would have many different perspectives to build from. The whole thing was, I fortunately or unfortunately grew up in a place where there was very little violence at all. It was in the suburbs of New York and in Connecticut. And if someone picked a fight with someone else, they didn't last long picking that fight, because one of the teachers would step in and say, you know, we don't do that here. We help each other. We don't hurt each other. And if it happened again, then they'd call the parents in and say, can you help us with this? Would you start saying this to your child when he's getting close to being aggressive? And so it was a community of people that was creating the norm. And the norm was not to be violent, not to be cruel, not to put people down, not to bully. I can only remember once when someone bullied and another child intervened because there wasn't a teacher there. Another child said, we don't do that here. And if we can get that mentality instead, you know, I can tell you, like I say, I can get on TV. All I got to do is go get my gun. And I do have one. I hate to admit it. I do have one. But I was taught how to handle it by the Norwalk, Connecticut Police Department because I can't run away. And I can't run. And so, but it was very much frowned upon to in any way bully someone, and it seemed as though everyone had that same idea, and even on the football team wasn't very aggressive, so we always lost. But, and I guess part of that might be that we need to teach times when you do need to stand up and protect or fight, and times when you don't start it, And I think that just telling someone don't feel angry doesn't work. Anger can be a very helpful emotion. It's how you use it. It's how we use it. And to start teaching how to use those feelings that we are, some of us, very afraid of, how can you use that for what it was meant to be used for? I don't get my house cleaned up until I get pissed off enough to do it. I guess that's what I'm saying. So anyhow, I don't know if that makes sense.
Lorraine has written, and I have one of the books she gave me about anger, and I remember her saying, and it has helped me a lot. For example, in the lobby of the clinic here, when a patient's angry, and I stand up and tower over that person, they're sitting down, and I stand up and tower over that person, and I'm talking. And normally I talk fast by nature, living in New York 40 years. But I try to calm my voice. I try to talk slowly, and I don't tower. I get down to their level. I'll bend down, and I'll talk to them and engage them. And I think sometimes we have to, a lot of times, not all our patients, some of our patients, what they know about emotions, either being passive or aggressive. Yeah. They don't know the in-between, being assertive. So I think we as counselors, as people they might look up to, have to model that behavior. And I see that as well. I remember the guy who, the governor of what his shooting was, he made an eloquent speech, and he was saying we can't look to our leaders to get back to normalcy. And I agree with him somewhat, but I also disagree. I think that on whatever side, I think it's important. I know we look up to our political leaders, or those leaders who have power, we want them to set the example, whether it's Republicans, Democrats, or whatever. We want them to set the example. And it saddens me if I hear a leader calling somebody vermin or something. It sets the tone, like it creates that normalcy, and we become a society. We think it's okay, you know, and that really saddens me for both sides. You know, somebody said to me the other day when I was getting on Facebook, the guy said, "Well, I bet you thought I was all right when they call us deplorables." I said, "No, I didn't think that was all right when somebody called certain group deplorable." I said, "No, I don't think that's right. No, I don't think, regardless." So I think we have to find a way to get back and stop look for not to look for our leaders, but I think they also set the tone as well. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think all of us set the tone.
Yes.
And yeah, and you just reminded me of working at the CTC clinic.
Yes.
And every time someone was in the parking lot with a weapon, they'd call for me.
Yes.
A desk would call me to go out and calm him down. And
Right,
you're
yes.
absolutely right. I would walk up and I would shake hands. I'd put out my hand. It's hard to hurt someone when they're making an offering of a hand.
Yes.
And then I'd invite them to sit down and talk with me. I didn't say in a harsh voice, sit down. I said, come on,
Them.
let's
I like the
sit
word
down,
invite
talk
them.
about it.
Yes. Yes.
I never once have been hit by one of those people or cut or attacked.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is about when you feel human and you treat someone else as human, it becomes very difficult to do harm. And it's hard. We are not meant to hurt our herd. We are meant to support our herd because we need that herd to keep us alive. It's instinctive. We actually start that while we're still in the womb. Our DNA starts picking up on those feelings from the person the womb, from whoever has the womb. And if that person gets terribly frightened, terribly angry, believe it or not, they are now just UNC is just talking about how some of that gets imprinted into the feeling life of the fetus. And so, I mean, it's happening all the time, and it's very visceral, it's very chemical. But we can handle our chemistry by how we approach other people and how we think about other people. And I got to tell you, me good, and
Yes.
Ruben certainly knows I don't love all people, but at least I can show respect.
Right. Yes.
And know that someday that person may save my life.
Yes.
What
Trevor, you
about-
joined. Anything you want to add in particular?
Yeah, I have kind of a 180 going here, because to me, from a spiritual level and not a religion, because religion is no good for anybody on the planet, but they don't even realize it. Spiritually though, your personal relationship with your higher power, however you understand that higher power, wants you to help others.
Mm-hmm.
With the acknowledgement of that means love has to be involved. We have to love each other just as we love our own selves. That is an instinctive, humanistic, natural feature of our very existence. And so my perception is very different than a lot of people. And because it's not me specifically that directs me on the spiritual level, it's my higher power. And that has to be engaged on a daily basis to be able to maintain the positivity of not having the mental or brain-powered reaction of reacting in a violent manner. because every single human being that has ever existed, and there's been approximately 178.8 to zero point 0.9 billion human beings that have ever existed on the planet. We only have about 8.8 or 8.9 itself right now. So out of all those human beings that have ever existed, every one of them have ever had the capacity inside them, being born with it, to choose one way of positivity or another way of negativity. That has to be developed by the parenting skills
Yes.
of the two human beings that come together to create that baby, and then go from there. The influences being created by human existence for thousands of years have been nothing, not consistent every time, but most of the influences have been in a negative capacity, so that people grow up and just used to the traditions of certain things and certain behaviors being accepted. So to change that, it is very important to remember that you can make a choice to choose a behavior pattern that is not hurtful or harmful to anyone else. And if you learn more, you can learn how not to hurt yourself or hurt others or harm them or harm others as well. So I firmly believe in a strong spiritual relationship, whether it be any of the religions, and there's hundreds of them out there, as long as those religions are not promoting violent acts, there should be a solution for you, easily attainable, as long as you maintain that spiritual relationship. So it boils down to choices, the humanistic aspect of choices. To me,
Well,
my
I agree with you.
my input is a lot different than most others, but I'm like the very last and the least in alphabetical order. I'm used to being that, but that's where I gain my strength from. So, anyways, I'm glad you let me interject for a moment and just maybe kind of take a step back, and let's make a repivoting direction into a direction where we all can take to help the humanistic part of this, because it's been going on for so long that we need to develop a new way. We need to move forward instead of backward together.
Well, I agree with you in this aspect. I find from my own experience that you said that the higher power. I think it reminds me of something I saw, a commercial or something. It was talking about, it was two kids. One was white, one was black, and it said the white kid cut his hair like his friend, so the teachers couldn't tell them apart. He felt like the teachers wouldn't be able to tell them apart because what they're saying, the kid didn't see black or white. You know what I'm saying? They just
That's
saw
right.
him. I think what happens over time is society influences us. So I think you said we all had a capacity to love, and we want to be in our herds and be accepted. But I think what happens is uh, society sometimes we become jaded with those influences. I think for myself, I think at a later age in my golden years, I'm more aware of how I treat another person because I'm probably more wiser, or because I want to do the work on myself. So I think that sometimes you say it's a choice, but I think sometimes it is a choice, but that choice becomes blinded or dismounted through just what we experience in society.
That could be a cultural issue too. Yes, sir. I
Yeah.
agree with you.
Kebo?
I'm sitting here listening to everything y'all are saying, and I think it's goes back to what came first, the egg or the hen.
Okay.
Nature versus nurture. Because Lorraine is right, Trevor, you're right, and Ruben, you're right. I think, I can be taught, you know, racism. I can be taught all of these things, but yet, Ruben, you said it the other day, and we've been talking about it throughout this whole episode.
Mhm.
If I allow myself to open up and get to know you, Ruben, to get to know you, Lorraine, to get to know you, Trevor, I will see that fundamentally speaking and rationally speaking, you, Lorraine said it earlier, my goal in that moment is I will allow you to be a part of the herd and you
Yeah.
will allow me to be a part of the herd because I'm getting to know you. That's how we challenge our biases. Growing up in a, I'm not going to say in a very racist family, I would be lying if I said that, but there were some things that I don't believe in today. And
Mhm.
for an example, I grew up during 9/11 era. And so in that moment, in that time, it was all Muslims were bad people. All people who believed in Islam are evil people. And today, through life experiences, I've been able to unlearn that type of thought process,
Mhm.
right?
There
And
you
it's
said it.
because I allowed
Boom.
myself to have an experience. And you said it too, Lorraine. It's going to be fearful. I'm going to be afraid, but that's not inherently a bad thing.
Right.
It's a good thing because my emotions are telling me something. In every piece of life, if I steal something, I'm gonna feel guilty. Therefore, my conscience and that emotion is telling me I did wrong. If I'm jealous, then whatever that situation is, I need to ask myself, how come I'm jealous, and what do I need to do to change that jealousy? If I'm angry, that's not a bad emotion. Why am I getting angry?
Mhm.
Right? If I'm sad, why am I crying? Or how come I'm crying? Maybe because I lost something that I loved so dearly. So there, and I think that's really the fundamental aspect of having human relationships with everybody, regardless of Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Constitutionalist, regardless of culture. Doesn't matter if they're from Asia, China, Middle East, Russia, Canada, Mexico, Nicaragua. Doesn't matter. It does not matter. And my goal in life, and this is my mission, is to be the best person I can be and love everybody the way I want to be loved, regardless of background, color of skin, and everything. And I don't have to deal with, I don't have to let society tell me how I should love somebody, or I need to look at this person as this, I need to look at this person as this. I get to make that decision through experience, as Lorraine and Ruben you two were talking, and I get to make it through having experiences where I don't have to put labels on people today. Lorraine, you're a clinical supervisor, but at the heart of it, you're still another human being
Mm-hmm.
who thinks and feels just like me. And Trevor, you're an ex-corrections officer, but at the core of it, you're still a human being. Ruben, you're the only
Exactly.
black person on the show right now, but at the core of it, you're still a human being. And Lorraine, I don't let me forget. I know you're about to say something, but you're Catacook or Shattucook or however you pronounce that culture, right?
Static.
So you're native Scattacook. Thank you. You're Native American. Trevor and I are Caucasian, and Ruben's African American. But outside of that, taking those labels off, I don't need to look at you as a Scattacook because
Mhm.
you're a individual who has thoughts and feelings just like I do.
Mhm. Oh,
You'd
absolutely.
be surprised to know that I have my grandmother's grandmother, and I've done the genealogy work, um, and found that I too am a part Native American. I don't have the same percentage strain in my blood as my mother or my grandfather or my great grandfather. But like I said, my grandmother's grandmother was a full-blooded Potawatomi Indian, a descendant derived out of the Iroquois out of Canada.
Mhm.
And most people don't even know the realization of when the Caucasian influences came to overtake their land and remove them. They forced them, specifically the Potawatomi Indians, Native Americans, on a trail of death. The Cherokee Trail was the Trail of Tears, but it was amplified by a 40 to 60% more deadly march to take them all the way from Michigan, my home state, all the way to Oklahoma, out in the middle of nowhere, and drop them and say, okay, here you go, and give them disease blankets and food. So I have a very strongly connected influence with Native Americans. And what that helped me realize in my study of my genealogy is the fact that no matter whether you're African American, because that's where the human civilization began, whether you're African American or Caucasian or Native American or Mongolian or Tibetan or Filipino, whatever you are, you're still a human being. So at a young age, I was able to connect with everyone because I had that knowledge, in the sense that I don't want to be any more violent to anyone else than they are to me, but I will defend myself if you try to attack me. I don't want to be violent, but I'm going to defend myself. I'm not just going to lay down like a lamb and just get slaughtered. Isn't that the humanistic aspect of this being pointed out as well? And please forgive me for interrupting, but the Shattuck thing, I've heard of that specific group before, and this is the first time I've heard of them since I did the studying on it. So,
Are you saying the Scatticook?
but go. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah, the Scatticook did not
I'm
go.
familiar of the name. And
Oh, you are?
go ahead.
That's good. That's unusual.
No.
One of the, and even among the Native people, please note I don't say Native American. I would be known as a Scatticook tribal nation is where I'm from, and we hid. We were
Gotcha.
forced to hide because when the people came over from other countries, they brought with them diseases we had never had. And when we got the fruit
Right.
from them, it would kill us. And so we ran to the mountains between Connecticut and New York. 5 tribes got together to create the Scatticook. And Scatticook means,
Okay.
are you ready? You're going to like this. Scatticook means the mingling of the water. And they translate it as the mingling of the tribal people.
Wow. Yes.
And they took that name because they had to get together, go hide. And to this day, you cannot find my house. I guarantee you. You've never been to my house, have you, Kevin? It's up in the woods and you can't find it.
It's hard to find. I've been there. It's hard to find.
That's right. It is hard. You got to know your way. You get lost in the woods. And
Yes.
you know what? I never learned, you know how I learned to do that? No one told me you need to hide. You want to keep your living space hidden. I learned it because it's the way that my parents lived, and their family around them is took that. We unconsciously teach our children. We know that, those of us who are therapists, and so does the gentleman. We know that, and yet when I watch people raise their children, and I wonder what the child just learned from that woman, from that mother, because the mother was yelling and screaming at another child, and not in a nice way, and it was in a grocery store. So the child was embarrassed and humiliated. We lose thoughts and choices when we're out and facing situations. What we do is we act on what we've already learned and been taught. And unfortunately, I think that in our culture right now, we're learning that if you want notoriety, go out and kill 30 or 40 people and you'll be on TV for 2 or 3 weeks.
Yes.
Not in a good way, but you'll be on TV. And we need somehow to change that around. And the gentleman's right. It's not going to be one person or 2 people. I think it's going to have to be by it. We didn't get to where we're at overnight.
Right.
1973, I believe, was the postal killing started. And from there, if you watch the history, you'll see how it grew and got to schools and then got to bus stops. It got to the federal building, I think in Colorado, where the guy drove up with a bomb in his panel truck and blew the whole building apart. You don't need guns. Getting rid of guns isn't the answer. They will find, before there were guns, they used hatchets. I read about some guy who, killed 40 people with a hatchet. Just him. Can you believe it? I mean, and it was before they had rifles and guns. And so it's more than just let's put a law that we can't have guns, or if you have a gun, you have to do this. That's nice and it sounds good. The problem is we knew how to kill before we had guns. And we knew how to harm before we had guns.
That's what you see in other, like I was looking at, what's this, Greenland, for example, and they were saying that some of these countries that are progressive as we are, they don't have mass shootings on a level that we do. They're not normalized. They were trying to figure out why. Like Canada said they don't want to become a part of the United States because compared to us, Canada has a low crime rate. So I'm just saying they don't have the mass shootings and what have you that we have in this country. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, this is my question because Lorraine, you said it earlier a little bit, at least you were dabbling around this. And if you look at the media, right? If you look at media coverage, they don't cover, trigger warning for anybody on what I'm fixing to say. If you need help, please dial 988 for the National Suicide and Crisis Hotline. If you need immediate help, dial 911 for the local emergency services. You can also go to a local crisis center and a local emergency department.
Mm-hmm.
They don't cover suicides anymore like they did back in the 50s, 60s, 70s because they learned, or it showed in research, that every time they would cover it or publicize it, suicides increased nationally, not just locally, but nationally. And so what I think should happen is stop publicizing these mass shootings and mass killings, because you'll hear about a school shooting, right? But you won't hear about 58 people over a weekend in Chicago, or 100 people, or whatever. I'm just throwing some ideas, some examples out here. But you won't get national coverage over those 58 people in Chicago, or 20 people in Los Angeles, or even 5 people in Raleigh over a weekend. But we'll do it on this mass school shooting, or we'll do it on this mass violence act over here, or we'll do it over here on this mass act. And I mean, that's just my personal opinion. That's not a clinical opinion. That's my personal opinion, is if we stop publicizing that, will we have so many? At least that's a question, not a opinion.
I have no idea.
Yes.
Yeah, to be honest with you. What
be
I
honest
do
with you.
know, huh? Did
Going to
someone?
make a difference.
I can't hear what he's saying.
I can't hear you. You're can't hear you. Yeah, I think your earpiece went dead. Try it now. Log out and come back in. Okay. So you were saying that you have no idea?
I have some, I think we've built up to this point. I think it's taken and it's a lot of different things that are happening that brought us here. And, and it's gotten to the point where we don't know how to walk it back. And the way that, and all of the politicians, I'm not picking on any one of them, the way that they are belittling each other is harmful. They used to be politicians used to be a bit more polite about what they said, and oh yes, they did, and I'm old enough to remember. Um, and I don't, and I'm talking, even if it's 60 years ago, somehow we've come down and have gotten pretty mean on both sides, actually. And it's almost as though getting even and bullying and doing those things that harm people who have less power than we do, let me put it that way, has become extreme, and it's getting publicity now more than it ever did. Used to be done more quietly. It may have been getting done a lot, but it was more quietly. And now we're seeing it every time we turn around. It's someone bullying someone else, or calling someone a name, or putting somebody down, or some group of people down, and deherding them, making them not part of. And 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 I have to agree that some of that we learn as we're growing up to do all of the things that, to love each other. Sometimes we learn that to just be good to each other. This is part of our herd, and then somehow we lose it. And I'm not sure how we have lost it, but we've lost it. And I'm really putting it back together. It does take parental guidance. And it does take, from the get go, parents and teachers and churches. And, the transsexual um, person who went and killed, um, did some killing. Um, Felt, I can guarantee you, if I had the time to sit down with him and find out why he went after those people and shot them, that he would say, when I was a child in Catholic school, I was made fun of because I told him I'd rather be a female than a male, or vice versa. And they made fun of me. And, you know, it's how we approach, and we forget that when we come up to people, we are in effect teaching them.
Yes.
And by our actions and by our responses, and and there are times I screw it up royally, and I have to go back and, you know what, make amends. Thank God for that. And, personal inventory. Oh, I was a naughty one then, and I have to go back and make amends. And and to teach, by doing we teach. And I think what kids are seeing and how they're being brought up now, especially on the TV, it's now not only in their homes, they're seeing it on the TV. And it's only going to get worse if we don't take some kind of action somewhere. But as I say, guns aren't. It's violence, mass violence has been going on since before guns were invented.
Right.
People found ways. Mm-hmm.
I think what Lorraine says something true though. Like even growing up, sometimes you have to learn how to handle conflict. I know when me and my sister, at some point when we got older and we would have sibling rivalry or spats, my mother and father would say, no, you two work it out. Sometimes I think we expect, even when we're adults, we expect our, as adults, we expect our parents to fix everything. I think sometimes we have to learn I think the worst thing you could do is shield your child from conflict, learning how to deal with conflict, because a lot of people now don't, I think, and that's important. And I think sometimes even with conflict with adults, with families, sometimes they have this conflict, they get caught up, and it's handed down to their children, you know what I'm saying, as well.
Mm-hmm.
That whole, we don't get along, so mom and dad don't get along, or sister and brother, so that the children, we're not gonna play with each other, they don't get along. So I think that's the worst thing you can do, but I think it has to start in the family as well, definitely. Yeah.
Sure. I know that from what I've seen in other people also is that they teach. Each and every one of us that is part of a family teaches the rest of the family. All of the things that the gentleman, Travis, is that his name?
Trevor
was saying.
Trevor can stay.
Well, Trevor, I had to I've got my distance glasses on. I couldn't.
It's okay. I got trifocals, so I'm with you.
Those just drive me nuts. Anyway, but yes, in order to learn that we care for other people, that we are part of this situation, that every time I meet a stranger, every time I go to work, every time I give a presentation or what the heck is going on, I am meeting bunches of people, and how I act in that rubs off on everyone. And so do they. So does Ruben when he's laughing and joking in the coffee room. And it rubs off, I leave there feeling a little bit happier and, and laughing and feeling, and we respond to each other. And sometimes we forget that, even if it's not our children, it's just a friend or someone new I've just met, or, something going on between two people that looks kind of, strange. And it just is on us to help to carry whatever message that we may have that can help to change this. And I really think more research should be done on it to see, Kevin, whether single parent homes versus a two-parent stronghold, what about if grandma's involved? Does that have an impact? I bet it does. And do they go to church, and are all of those teachings, are they help to change our behaviors and how we look at life, even when we're 10 years old? Yeah. I mean,
I think grandparents, I know my grandmother, for example, when I moved to New York, that's who I lived with for a while. She had a tremendous impact in the family. I think now, like I have grandkids and they're adults, but I find that now, you know, like uh, sometimes I feel with, you know, grandparents, uh, life is so busy that, you know, sometimes they don't value that relationship like maybe I did with my grandmother, you know, like until something happens when, okay, they're dead now, ooh, you know, but I always, like my daughter always encourages my daughter grandkids, go visit your grandparents and vice versa. I think that's important. You know, sometimes I think sometimes life happens and they get so busy, you know, so I think sometimes doesn't pull the weight like it used to. You know, how you doing, Grandpa? See you later. You know what I mean? Like I think that relationship is different than when I knew my grandmother. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. My grandmother was real important to me. On my father's side, she was
Mhm.
blind and she lived alone on the second floor
Wow.
of an
Yes.
apartment building.
Mhm.
And she lived alone. She lived about 5 hours away. She lived in Massachusetts, and we lived in Connecticut. And I always thought, God, if someone who's blind can get in her own apartment and make it,
Wow. Yes.
I sure as heck can too. You know,
Right. Yes.
I mean, we
Yes.
teach. I mean, we learn by other people modeling for us.
Mhm.
You know. So anyway, her favorite show was Mr. Ed, the horse. Yeah. Anyway, guys, I've got to go eat dinner.
Right. That's what we all do. Like.
Hold on, dude. Listen, we're going to wrap it up. Okay.
Okay.
So, if there's anything that you want somebody to take away from this, what would that be?
That we need to start looking at the situation in a more critical, less judgmental way. Stop
Okay.
blaming, stop pointing, stop thinking that power overcoming power will work. It won't. It hasn't.
And
All
yes,
right.
What will
And
work? Yeah. Go ahead.
okay. And what is your call to action?
Well, I'm going to try and do research in create a research study on kids in school, in elementary school, and see if I can't get a grant to do that, and to see what impact we can have on those children and their families, and whether they will start taking in and adding to their value system uh, what we want to teach, which is, violence doesn't work. Forcing people to do things really isn't good for anyone. I function much better when I make my own decisions. We
Hmm.
got to learn how to make good decisions. So I'd like to do a research project. I'd like to see a good research project with
Gotcha.
children and in elementary grades, and then
Gotcha.
follow them as they leave.
Lorraine, it's been an absolute privilege and honor. Thank you for
Well, thank
being
you.
able to come on here and talk. Now, I'm going to end the live, so don't hang up.
Lorraine said she has to have dinner.